The Truce at Bakura by Kathy Tyers was released in December of 1993. Now, for the Thrawn trilogy, Bantam took a more measured approach. There was just one book a year. But the Truce at Bakura opened the floodgates, so to speak. And after this, Bantam released books very, very quickly, both hardcover releases and paperbacks. Compared to the Thrawn trilogy, Truce at Bakura did pretty good. It ultimately made it to number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list for the week of December 12th, 1993, and ultimately was on the list for 7 weeks, a bit shy of even The Last Command's record. And the price has remained stable at this point at $21.95. So my recollections of the Truce at Bakura. This one, I remembered some parts very distinctly and some parts not at all. But unlike my memories of the Thrawn trilogy, it wasn't broken up into, I remembered the end but not the beginning. I remembered that this took place immediately after Return of the Jedi, that both Obi-Wan and Anakin appear to Luke and Leia during the story, and that this was the first attempt to give Luke a girlfriend, so to speak. But a lot of the specifics of the story, in particular, the machinations of the Imperial Governor, I'd completely forgotten and were completely new to me. So, a brief summary. Immediately after the destruction of the second Death Star over the forest moon of Endor, the Alliance intercepts a distress call from the Imperial world of Bakura, which is currently being attacked by an unknown alien force. The Alliance leadership, including Mon Mothma and Princess Leia, decide that they should send rebel troops to help out the Bakurans, mostly because with the galaxy still reeling from the defeat of Emperor Palpatine, they believe that they can draw more worlds into the Alliance. Meanwhile, on Bakura, the Sisruk, the evil dinosaur-like alien race, are attacking the planet precisely because they were summoned there by the now dead Emperor. So our heroes have a twofold mission: to defeat the Siruk before they can overrun the whole galaxy, and to bring at least one world into this fledgling, hopefully new republic. First, I have to say that my Princess Leia costume count was very good, actually, for this book. She wears on several occasions a reproduction or copy of her senatorial gowns, but in one scene where they all go and have dinner with the Prime Minister Captason, Leia wears a very distinct outfit composed of a one-sleeved red dress, a very elaborate bracelet that the Ewoks gave her, and a very elaborate hairdo. So well done, Kathy Tyers. You knew exactly what I wanted out of these books, and you delivered. In the Truce at Bakura, Luke and Leia both have very distinct character arcs that they follow. Luke is still reeling from the death of his father and the Emperor's attack. He's not well, and in addition, Obi-Wan gave him a message that he needs to be here. So, in a way, Luke is still trying to figure out his purpose, but in another way, his Force abilities are almost too far beyond what point I feel he would be at this time in the story. Zahn was very careful to only have Luke do things that either were done in the movies or that we could extrapolate that he could do, but Luke's Force abilities in this book are a bit much. It's not quite to the level that some of the Bantam books will get. For instance, in the Black Fleet Crisis, he rebuilds Darth Vader's Solitude Fortress or something, but he does some things that I feel I can't buy him doing. He's healing people, showing people how to heal people, looking through people's eyes. He also, several instances, just straight up hand waves people to do what he wants, which I know he does in Return of the Jedi, but I've always had a little bit of an issue with that ability, so to see him just sort of, without consideration, use it bothers me. Leia's character arc, meanwhile, is that Luke told her who her father was, and she's not happy. She's not pleased with it. She doesn't want to admit that Darth Vader could have had any part in making her. And when he appears as a Force ghost to talk to her, she pretty much tells him to get out of town and get out of here, which I feel is pretty realistic for Leia. By the Thrawn trilogy, she's a bit more accepting of her ancestry, her heritage, but at this point, it's so new to her, and she's still so angry about what Vader did that, you know, she's not ready to be trained as a Jedi, and she doesn't really want to, and that's perfectly fine. Han's character arc is a little, well, it's not as interesting as what Luke and Leia are going through. He pretty much just wants alone time with Leia, and he gets like 2 chances to have it, otherwise he's just there. On a side note, he called Luke multiple times Junior, which I thought was really weird. I know that there was one instance in The Empire Strikes Back when they were on Hoth that Han said something like, well, you owe me, Junior. But I'm so used to him calling Luke Kid that when he was repeatedly calling him Junior, I just went, no, this is not right. This is not right. I mentioned that this was one of the first books to give Luke a girlfriend. Now, I'm not one of those people that think Luke has to stay a celibate hermit. I'm perfectly fine for him to have a girlfriend, but it was a little awkward in this book. Gariel just appears suddenly. I mean, not suddenly. She's a member of the Senate on Bakura, but she's just like there. It's literally Luke sees a girl and he's like, oh, we have a Force connection. And then he finds out that her religion doesn't like the Jedi, and he's like, I can deal with this, but she's like, no, I mean, you're cool now, I like you, but I'm gonna stay here, and then that's it. I don't know, maybe the relationship would have worked better if we weren't just going off of one small book, but it felt like the main draw for Luke was that she felt really cool in the Force, and I didn't really understand that. And I mean, yeah, fine, she's a pretty girl, and she has 2 different colored eyes, and she's really smart, but she doesn't really do anything for me. What I did really love, though, was a minor character, the elderly lady Epi Belden that Gariel stays with and who had previously been involved in one of the Bakuran uprisings. I really loved Epi. Although, the more I read her name, the more I got confused, was calling her Trixie Belden in my head, but no, her name is Epi Belden. She was fun. She was an older lady. She, sort of without explanation, had really great tech skills, but I bought it because she was an older lady. And she was pretty much the reason that the uprising won. I like seeing characters who are older or alien or more interesting. It's fun when they pop up. In a similar note, maybe because Kathy Tyers is a woman writing a Star Wars book, but compared to the Thrawn trilogy, I felt like there were actually a lot more named female characters and even throwaway female characters than in the past 3 books I read. There's Tessa Manchisco, who's the captain of the ship that Luke's on. There's female Bakuran guards, female aides. Gariel is a female senator. She's got her elderly lady friend. The prime minister's wife is a character. It was just, I just felt like I didn't have to search as hard to find female characters other than the mains this time. The Imperial Governor, Nereus, didn't really work for me, though. He was just so overtly evil. I mean, even look at his name, Nereus, Nero. He wears black leather gloves all the time. He's interested in alien teeth and alien parasites. I like when villains are recognizable as villains, but this was maybe too much so. And just, like, ridiculously evil. To the point that I know previous Bakuran uprisings had been pretty much put down by the force of the Empire. Nereus sending out loads of stormtroopers to just shoot everyone into submission, but he's so awful that you just wonder how he remained in power so long. Likewise, Commander Thanos was interesting. I liked his backstory that he tried to help the miners on the world where he had previously been stationed, and that backfired, and when he was told to kill them, he said no, and now he's pretty much like, this is a bad job on a bad planet, and you're just you're not going to get anywhere good after this. But I didn't appreciate that him surrendering to the Alliance literally took Luke using the Force. Luke didn't use the Force to force him to surrender, but it's sort of, I wish he had come to that of his own volition. I also wish maybe he had come over to the Alliance side a little earlier. I like the moment where the Siruk were ready to retreat and then he immediately turned on the Alliance, but I wish there had been more of a struggle rather than being like, well, I gotta do my orders or I'm just gonna get shipped off to an even worse world that I'm gonna end up a minor, oh dear. The Siruk, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, Siruk, they're one of the elements in this book that make me feel like I'm not reading a Star Wars story. They're essentially like evil dinosaurs in space. I guess it's interesting that they whistle, and I guess that's, cool now with what we know about dinosaurs, dinosaurs being a lot more bird-like than we knew, but, like, they're just there. I don't really feel anything about them. And their technology is another thing that strikes me as just un-Star Wars-like. First of all, every time I read the word entechment, my mind wanted to substitute entrenchment, which got annoying. But the whole idea that they have these triangular, super-powered battle droids that are powered by human life energy, like, I understand how that's a threat, but, like, it just seems so stupid. Like, on the level of when you watch The Matrix and you find out that everyone's powering batteries. Like, why? Another thing is that, like so many alien species, the Shiruk, like, even their name, I don't know how to pronounce it. When you give me names that have, like, consonants and apostrophes, and more consonants and apostrophes, like, if I can't say it in my head, when I'm reading it, my mind just runs over it. I'm like, So reading all the Shiruk and their little slave pueks, every time I got to a different name, my mind would just be like, and like, if it weren't for the fact that, like, the really evil hypnotizing one was blue and the other one was, like, small and brown, I would not be able to keep them straight. Dev Sibwara adds a little bit of interesting, I guess, nuance to the history we know of the Jedi, in that we find out that his mother was a Jedi apprentice who didn't finish his training and went on to have a family, and then, whether because of the Jedi Purge or something else, left Chandrila, went farther out, presumably into the unknown regions, and was ultimately killed by the Shiruk. I guess, though, Dev's hypnotizing is another element of the book that just, like, doesn't feel Star Wars to me. I can completely buy that an alien species would be like, oh, this Force-sensitive individual is useful, we will use him. But just, like, the specifics of their ship and the hypnotizing and I really don't like the Siruk, and I don't find them interesting, and so that's a problem. They're most of the book. Likewise, Governor Nereus's plans to not hand Luke over to the Siruk, or rather to hand him over to the Siruk, but make sure that he won't be alive and he'll kill them all, is another instance where I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. Also, just to add that the whole idea of, like, alien parasites going from your stomach to your lungs and then eating through to your heart is horrifying. I could buy a certain amount of horror in my Star Wars, but, like, that's a bit much. And then you start to be like, am I okay? And so they're like, am I gonna get, like, an alien chest thing? I don't want to think about that. This is the first instance in the books we really get of, like, a Star Wars religion. Well, I guess there was that priest in Dark Force Rising, but he's just a throwaway character, busts up a sabacc game, all that. Gariel is a follower of the cosmic balance. It basically sounds like a Star Wars religion version of, the Buddhist concept of yin and yang, that things have to balance out. Which is interesting, especially when she comes in contact with Luke, a Jedi, in that her religion believes that when someone has that much power, you know, the wheel spins and that someone somewhere else, you know, really has no power at all. But I guess this is sort of the same thing I mentioned with Luke and Gariel's sort of relationship, in that I felt like one book isn't really enough to build on that or cover that. And in a way, she accepts Luke so easily in the end that it just feels like something added to create instant drama. Like, oh, well, of course they're not going to get along because it's against her religion. I don't know. It's interesting. I just felt like it could have been used more or different or something. There's other cool things in the book that really don't get delved in much, and I wish I could say it would get delved in more in later books, but it probably won't. For instance, the Bakurans have this very like anti-droid sentiment. They don't like droids, they don't use droids. That ends up working to our trio's advantage because they're able to like sneak into places that don't have droid security. But it's just like, it's there. We're given a throwaway line why they don't like droids, but it's just like background. I guess I also find it weird that there's a whole planet whose industry is based on repulsor lifts, and just all the descriptions of the repulsor lift chairs and repulsor lift beds. My mind is like, I guess I get the concept of repulsor lift chairs, that they're like floating off the ground, but repulsor lift beds, it sounds like you're like floating in the air, and how is that comfortable? I don't want to sleep like that. So in short, I think the Truce at Bakura had some very interesting ideas. It did some very nice things with Leia and her coming to terms with her heritage, but on the whole, it didn't 100% work for me. It didn't really feel like a Star Wars novel, and there were some parts that I really, really did not like. But in the end, I'm glad I gave it a reread and I got to see what was going on immediately after Return of the Jedi. So next time, I'm gonna try something a little different, and instead of reading the next book that was released chronologically, I'm going to read one of the unreleased, canceled books, The Heart of the Jedi.